All right, it is 6:06 p.m. Monday, December 1st, and I'm calling this school board work session to order. As we call this meeting to order, the school board would like to take this moment to respectfully acknowledge we are residing on the traditional land of the Dene people. Our mission statement: as a community, we create supportive learning environments where all students thrive. Ms. Richardson, will you please call the roll?
Miss Carol Hubbard,
Here.
Mr. Doran,
Here.
Ms. Julian,
Here.
Miss Hewitt,
Here.
Mrs. Hull,
Here.
here, Mr. Burgess.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, the first item on our agenda is a bullying resolution. This is a new resolution that the Diversity Committee worked on over the past year. I think they really had it done this spring, and we're hoping that it could get on an agenda earlier, but it's here in front of us now, and we have this work session to suggest changes. If we want to make any changes, ask the administration to rework anything that we want to. Yeah, that's where we're at. And then this will come before the board once we feel that it's ready to go on a regular agenda. Hopefully, this won't take too long tonight. The Diversity Committee, again, has worked quite diligently on this and put quite a lot of time into it. So if there's any tweaks that we want to make, that's fine, but do want to be conscientious of that committee's work. Do you have anything? All right, and with that, we'll open it up to the board. Comments, questions? Mr. Doran.
Thank you, and I appreciate the committee looking at it in terms of, and the board looking at it as affirming or reaffirming our commitment to students on this topic. But in the last whereas, I believe, I think it should be just FNSB SD deleting diversity committee, because it's no longer the committee, it's now our district, and that's doing that. So I would say just that change.
Thank you. And I do want to note that the board member who chaired that committee while this was being worked on is not here to help provide context. Unfortunately, that was Brandy Hardy. And but I do want to say, I noticed that in the therefore be it resolved section, there is in collaboration with the FNSB SD Diversity Committee, the district will continue developing and implementing programs, et cetera. So I'm wondering if it's in there as a whereas because it's tied to the therefore. But Ms. Carol Hubbard.
Oh, well, just a comment on this subject, then I feel like we should remove the diversity committee. I'm in agreement with Mr. Doran out of the whereas, and then possibly remove it then from the bottom, because if this is coming from the board, then it's no longer work of the committee, then it becomes our work. So I would support that, but I would support removing it in both places. And then I have another question, if you could put me back in the queue.
Ms. Maple.
I do agree with pulling it from the whereas. I do like, well, I am making an assumption about the intention of it being in the be it resolved, that perhaps the intention there is that this provides some direction to the diversity committee. As the new chair of that committee, I read that sentence and it reinforces to me what my role as chair, like in chairing that committee, is supposed to be. So I think it's, for lack of a better word, kind of cool that there's some direction given in there about what this version of the committee hoped to see happen moving forward. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but if it is, I think that that might be the intention and what it's certainly how I'm reading it. But I do agree with removing from the whereas, because I would hate for it to make it read as if it were the district as a whole that's committed to fostering an inclusive school environment. So the diversity committee by default as a part of the school district would also do that. So yeah.
Mr. Doran.
To Ms. Carol Hubbard's comment, I would agree in terms of taking it out of the resolve. Again, that's not the only committee we collaborate with. They are one of the major committees in terms of this. But this is more than a diversity issue, but it impacts all our committees, all our programs. And so again, it's the broad district. And I think the not taking away from the diversity committee, they're the committee who happened to bring this forward, and really appreciate that work, because it's good. As I read it, I was like, oh, well, this is in our handbooks, it's in our policies, it's there, but we're reaffirming it, and it's good to sometimes just say, as a reminder to everyone, this is what we stand for in the environment, the welcoming environment we want for all students. But it could have come from any other committee or from the administration and the departments, whatever, and said, hey, we need to remind that. So I like the idea that we're talking about the district and this is developed and implemented on a broad basis, and it's reflective in our non-discrimination statements, et cetera. But I think it's cleaner. We as a whole district, every single part does this. So
Ms. Hull.
I would also support removing diversity committee from both paragraphs.
Ms. Carol Hubbard.
To just to Ms. Maple's comment, I love it that she got direction out of that, and I think that's really neat. However, I do kind of want to still remove it. I mean, not kind of, I do want to still remove it. But it reminds me kind of like of an editor's note, like when you're writing and then it's like notes to the author, and you go, okay, delete, 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 because those are all notes to me as I'm writing things, but you remove them because they're not really paramount to the article. So even though we definitely want to keep that direction toward the diversity committee, if that's the direction that she got out of it, because I think that's awesome. But I do want to support removing from both of those paragraphs. I don't want to get off the subject if someone else has a comment, but I want to go to a different place if somebody else wants to talk about that. I'll wait.
Go ahead, Ms. Carol Hubbard.
Okay, thank you. The sentence before, I'm in the resolved, where it says the district commits to supporting students who are both victims and perpetrators of bullying by providing counseling resources, peer support programs, and ensuring that concerns are heard and addressed promptly. Do we currently do all of those things as a district? I just want to make sure that we currently are providing counseling and that this isn't engaging anything new or introducing anything new. This is things that are already happening, that are already taking place within our school system district.
Yes, I would say that it doesn't introduce anything new. Counseling is a pretty broad term. It's the way that I interpret, it being written there. Counseling can come in many different forms in terms of counseling from a teacher or from a principal or our actual counselors. We do a fair amount of restorative practices work around students that have infractions for bullying or are misbehaving in certain ways. And so that's all a part of that restorative practices work that schools are doing to ensure safe spaces for students.
Can I respond?
Go ahead, Ms. Carol
Okay.
Hubbard.
Do we, I don't recall seeing the safe spaces referenced in here. Is that something that is newer that wasn't existing when this was written? Or are we cross-referencing that program in this resolution?
I don't think it specifically is cross-referencing it. This was created by the diversity committee, and so administration wasn't involved in the drafting of the resolution, but I think it definitely supports the work that we're doing in many different areas to try to ensure safe schools.
Thank you.
Mr. Doran.
I'm glad that point was brought up because and I'd suggest a little difference in the wording or possible deletion of the sentence. But when we say the district commits to supporting students who are both victims and perpetrators, it gets a little bit confusing and distracting. And I know it's one of those issues that we work a balance. If a student misbehaves, we want to use the opportunity to teach them so when they graduate, they don't get in greater troubles and they learn how to work well with people. Certainly, if they're the target of it, we want to be able to support them and help them. So, but the way it's written, it brings some red flags, and I think to parents and students, it all of a sudden creates a certain dichotomy. But maybe either deleting the sentence because it's what we do, we provide those things, or we want to highlight that we provide those resources, that the district commits to supporting students impacted by bullying through the provision of, but it broadens it out without putting such a two-face to the reader, because we're going to try to help both or as many students are as involved in an incident if it comes. And bullying is a very specific type of thing, but this is broader than just bullying itself. But that's my concern. So.
Ms. Maple.
Sorry, I think I'm feeling argumentative this evening. I like that it specifically says that because I don't think that it is an assumption that we support the person that is guilty of the behavior. I think that making it clear that the expectation is that students on every end of this are supported is, I think that there's a reason to make that clear. And I think that it backs up the type of constructive, supportive learning environment the district tries to provide, seeks to provide. Yeah.
Anything else from the board? Ms. Julian.
Thank you. I also believe that it's important that we maintain the way that it's worded with identifying both perpetrators and also victims of bullying, because it really helps identify that and also commits to supporting both sides, that and also understanding that even if a student is a perpetrator, that student still needs support to change that behavior. So I would be in favor of leaving that as written. Going back to the previous conversation, I'm in support of removing diversity committee from this because this is a resolution of the board, not of a committee. And if committees need more guidance, I don't believe that it's in the resolutions that we would provide guidance to a committee. We can do that in other aspects, but I'm hearing that from Ms. Maple, and thinking, are there other ways that we can address that direction, but not necessarily need to put it within the resolution. So that's it. Otherwise, I support it as written.
Anything further from the board? Mr. Doran?
The last sentence in the first resolve, although it says furthermore, and maybe through the chair to the administration get some feedback on it, but it's the board ensures ongoing evaluation of the programs. I'm seeing it as unnecessary and just extensive. We do things, we do the climate survey, so we get feedback. We already have these things. I think when it's talking about that earlier that we're committed to developing the programs and implementing them, that evaluation piece is already part of it, and we're looking. I think we have that covered in a lot of different places, and I'd keep the focus more on because actually we're not doing the evaluation, be the administration, and on what it's very vague, what rotation cycle, whatever, whether we're talking about a program approach, whether we're talking about other things that schools do on a regular basis that really support this whole thing, but they're not something you can put an evaluation on. But I think we do have this covered, and with our school climate surveys that we do every year, and one of the major questions is in this area. Several of the questions relate to this area. So.
Mr. Dorn, are you suggesting to remove that sentence in its entirety?
I would suggest just taking it out, and we already have the student feedback. We already have, follow best practices. I think it adds extra verbiage that is not necessary, takes away a little bit from the onus of the focus of what we want here.
Ms. Carol Hubbard?
I would support removing it as well.
Okay, I'll speak on that one. I actually, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Doran, but I do appreciate this being here, but perhaps a wording change, I would suggest rather than ensures, we could say something along the line of the board encourages and supports the ongoing evaluation of, et cetera. So any thoughts from the board on that, the rest of the board? Mr. Dorn?
I don't think it changes the substance of my point, so I'm not in favor of just changing a word on that.
Anyone else? Ms. Carol Hubbard?
So just to make sure that I understand, the administration is really in the position to evaluate, not necessarily the board. Is that correct? So is this kind of a false statement a little bit? It's a misleading statement a little bit.
Dr. Meinert?
I mean, I think Mr. Doran's right in that most of the evaluation does come through the administration. Now, with that said, if you want to take it down a rabbit hole, the board does budget for certain things from time to time that they want to see help support the educational environment. And so at that point in time, they might be presented with an evaluation from the administration regarding bullying or whatever it may be. So I don't want to say that it's emphatically false, but Mr. Doran's right in that most of the evaluation takes part from the administration.
Thank you. Then I stick with my support to remove it.
Ms. Julian.
I'll support removing it. I think it's redundant.
Ms. Hewitt.
I would support removing the last sentence as well.
Mr. Doran.
We're ready to move to, I have one other point.
Go ahead.
In the title, we say a resolution affirming a commitment. In the first resolve, we say that we reaffirm our commitment. And I would suggest that it makes sense to do one or the other, but make them the same. I kind of lean towards I lean towards the affirm because we do that present. I can live with reaffirming because we have this throughout our policies and handbooks and stuff like that. So I'm comfortable either way, but I think we should be consistent.
I agree on that point. I think I would support affirm. I'm seeing some nods from the board. Yeah. I think we have consensus there. Okay, anything further from the board? The only thing that I wanted to mention was that it is a very long, therefore be it resolved. And in playing around with it, I could see breaking it up into as many as 5 separate resolved statements in there, or be it further resolved statements. I know typically we don't have a whole lot of be it further resolved in our resolutions, but it might actually make this language more clear. So I wanted to bring that up for discussion. Mr. Doran.
Thank you for that opening. I agree with you that the resolve is too long, and I think there's some repetitiveness in it. I wasn't. I'm concerned about, for myself, getting too much into wordsmithing, but I would encourage that perhaps even I'd let the administration, if they could kind of tighten that up a little bit, and I'd be real comfortable with that and bring back a little bit more concise that still keeps the things, but there are things in here that as you said, they're further resolved, which gets really long, but there's some repetitiveness within it. And if we could tighten that up, I'd certainly support that.
Ms. Carol Hubbard.
Thank you. In the resolved paragraph, could we, okay, the board, where it says the board encourages educators, staff, administrators, and all adults, okay? So we don't need to address parents, guardians, and community members unless we want to. I mean, we could list all of those out, but it seems like those 2 lines could be combined into one. So we're encouraging adults by demonstrating kindness, inclusivity, positive conflict resolution. Then we could say fostering positive behavior and reinforcing the message that, bullying. I mean, it's super wordy. Could we could chop maybe even the second sentence, add a little bit more to the first sentence, and sort of mush those together? That might be helpful. It's not a very good direction, but sorry.
Ms. Julian?
Okay, I will say that this is an important resolution. Bullying is not okay, and it is pervasive in our culture. Period. Not in our culture of our school. It's pervasive in the culture of the world exhaustively. I would support something that just says we are going to do everything we can to make sure that bullying does not happen and that we support students so that they have tools in their toolkit to know what to do instead of bullying and know what to do if somebody's being bullied. But I think it's too wordy. I am totally in support of tightening it up. I think that brevity is reigns supreme here because the title of this is absolutely important, and I feel like we've delayed this resolution into this school year, and I would like to see us get this done. A resolution affirming a commitment to a safe, inclusive, and bullying-free environment for all students. Bam. It's awesome. But if we can tighten it up and make it more powerful, I'm supportive of that.
All right. Anything further from the board here? All right. Does Dr. Meinert, do you and your team feel like you have enough direction to move forward?
I think we do. And, that last now therefore be it resolved paragraph, I think we can work collaboratively together on that to tighten it up. Once we have a draft, I'll get that out to board members for some feedback directly through me. And then we'll work with President Burgess to get it on a future agenda.
Thanks. And my goal would be to have this at the beginning of next semester, essentially, at our first meeting next year. Okay. All right. Well, with that, seeing nothing further from the board on this item, we'll move on to our next agenda item. This is going to be a discussion about the Two Rivers Charter Letter of Intent. Dr. Meinert.
All right. Thank you, President Burgess. I requested this conversation from the board to seek direction from the board in terms of how you would like administration to go forward and working with the Two Rivers Charter APC and specifically around a lease for that building. As we talked about throughout the charter work sessions with Two Rivers, that building is not currently available because we do have a Best Satellite office within that school currently residing there. And so if the board did want administration to negotiate a lease, I didn't feel comfortable doing that without clear direction from the board in doing so. And just a reminder for the board, if that's the direction that we want to go and the board is saying that this building is potentially available, there is a right of first refusal for our current charter schools for that building. So keeping that in mind, that if we're saying this building is available for lease to charter schools, our existing charter schools would have a right of first refusal to that building.
Ms. Julian, and then I have Ms. Maple.
Okay. Yes, I am. I'm very supportive of you moving forward and negotiating a lease with the APC. The rationale behind that is we are looking at a very, this is a group who has taken the feedback that was received on their first application, and they pulled their own application after the administration review, after their presentation and the administrative review. And and their actions are collaborative. We hear that word a lot. but they have been leaders in this community to model what collaboration and what trust and what bridge building looks like. I am very impressed with their willingness to continue to collaborate with us on this process, a process that can, that we've received feedback from, that can be difficult for community members to navigate. And so therefore, I would hope that that the administration works with them on a lease. I also would be supportive, and I think that it would be important to look at the financial modeling without a best hub in that area. I also know that if we negotiate a lease with them, that will probably impact their financials. And so we need to, that's something that they obviously are very seriously looking at. And so that will give them the ability to make decisions and model the finances of it. And if I can add one more thing, I also would be supportive of looking at the financial modeling as Mr. DeGraw has already put forward to us from the administrative review of the initial application. But there was, I believe, a 5 or 6 year modeling out of the financial impact. That was very helpful. And if we are going to negotiate a lease with them, looking at that modeling with the other factors that would play into that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Ms. Maple.
I agree with everything that Ms. Julian just said. I specifically the financial piece that and I understand that there's a process that then it, means that the district needs to go through. Considering the building as an available building, but specifically what Ms. Julian said about making sure that as Two Rivers, as the Homestead APC works through that budgeting, they need a real solid, a concrete idea of what or concrete number, not an idea, a number of what that lease would look like so that they can continue to budget that out. I also agree with Ms. Julian of budgeting that without BEST. I think that the school will attract all of those, would attract all those students back. So I don't think it's a safe thing to bank on. And I want the APC to be able to amend their application in a way that in a way that works with the more precise numbers that they'd actually be operating with. I won't just keep repeating Ms. Julian's comments though. Thanks.
Mr. Doran.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions relative to tonight. But since we're talking about a lease at this point, I'll start there. In that, first of all, we're not talking about a lease with a specific charter school. We have to decide if the building, we are looking to lease the building to anybody. And so I go back to two questions and to the chair of the administration to respond to. There was a reason that the facility was recommended for closure. So reviewing the reasons for its closure, but also the reasons to keep it. We decided it wasn't one that we were going to turn back to the borough. Part of at least part, if not the main reason to keep it was to provide a best hub because of, and we decided to do in two places to have that. So part of the best hub, if I understand it, and I would ask the administration to elaborate, elucidate, remind us, what the idea was for that best hub. What our intents are for it to grow. We have just a few months experience with it. So we really don't know fully where it's, but what are those intents? And so whether it's available to a building, in my mind, it's not available. We had something in mind with it. But if you could answer those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question regarding what the intent of having best available there in that community was really to provide homeschooling support to a community that we know has a strong homeschooling background. There was already several homeschooling families that were not homeschooling with best within that community. So providing support to those families, and then as well as with that school closure, knowing that Two Rivers is one of our most rural schools, um, thinking that some of those families would not make the choice to go to Weller or North Pole Middle or a different school. And so if they did choose the option of homeschooling, that we would be providing support for those students and families right there within the community. I think there was also conversation around, we know in rural communities that the school serves as a hub of activity for the community. And so by having a best presence within that community, that school can still serve as that community meeting point for a variety of activities that's really important for Two Rivers.
And if I might, and if you could talk a little bit about the ideas of in opening the hub, what sort of expansion growth we are hoping to see over the next couple of years, because especially in light of the assessment that that is a growing area, so we would not be looking to pull out of the hub, is what I'm hearing. But what's our growth plan or hope?
Yeah. I mean, part of it, I think, depends on this conversation and the direction we go forward with the utilization of that building itself. If Best stays the way it is, our growth plan, we're very hopeful that we continue to grow and add numbers to Best. The last year that Two Rivers School was open, they had more than 60 students within that community. We also know that there's other homeschooling families further down Chena Hot Springs Road that might choose to access Two Rivers rather than coming all the way into Nordale. And so I think there's growth potential there, as well as potentially down Nordale or some of the families that go that way. And so really just having an available best specialist where people are is a great service that we can provide as a district. As you've seen with other homeschool programs, they try to be everywhere that families are. And so this is a way that we can do that right within Fairbanks, is try to move to the boundaries of our borough to ensure that we're providing excellent support and services to our families.
Okay, I have Ms. Hull, then Ms. Hewitt, then Ms. Carol Hubbard.
I won't hit on the rationale because Ms. Delian and Ms. Maple did an excellent job, but I fully support what they were both talking about.
Ms. Hewitt.
On the next steps, if the board decides to pursue a lease, then it's opened to all charters. When does that become finite? Like as soon as we decide, or?
Yeah, if there's clear direction coming out of the conversation tonight, I would contact our charter school principals and let them know that Two Rivers School could be available starting in the 26-27 school year, and that I would ask that if there is interest in that facility, that they let me know, within the next 2 weeks or so, so that it's not an indefinite period of time that they consider it, but that we would give them the opportunity of first the right of first refusal, which is clearly articulated in state statute that we need to go through that process first.
And does that immediately preclude or include BEST?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think that's definitely a separate conversation. But if we're saying coming out of this evening, and I don't know where this direction from the board is going to go, but if the board wants us to consider a lease with BEST still staying there, that could happen. Or if we're saying that the entire building is available for lease, then that's the direction that we would go in our conversations with charter schools.
Ms. Carol Hubbard?
Thank you. Can we talk about BEST for a minute? I think you just did, but I'm going to ask again because I like to drill the details. So how many BEST students right now do we have that are utilizing the Two Rivers location?
22.
Okay. Thank you. So can I keep going? Thank you. All right. So if we were to lease the building to a charter school, about how many, so the charter would most likely be a K-8, so then we would have high school students that would be in need of possible homeschool services, or they would have to go to a neighborhood high school somewhere. If that were the case, how many high schoolers would we have that would be that are currently enrolled in the BEST program that would still be in that area?
We can get that exact number for you, but Ms. Beam says it's a handful of high school students.
So 5 or 6 or something, maybe? Okay. So then thinking that it's going to be 5 or fewer possibly, would it be reasonable to negotiate a room even inside the building as a tutoring space, facility, meeting place for BEST that would be so that they would coexist inside that and at least leave them some space to accommodate the high school, even those 5 high school students? I mean, does that sound reasonable?
I think that seems reasonable in terms of a space allocation. I would be hesitant to say that we would definitely staff it with a full-time staff member, but that BEST could still have access to the building and rotate a teacher out there periodically to provide support to the community. I think that would be a really wise direction to go.
I love that idea. I love the period. I mean, they don't need necessarily to have a full-time staffed all the time. So I like that idea. I'm absolutely in support of opening the building up for a lease to a charter and trying to, and with the idea of keeping a small BEST unit in there, whether that be one, it sounds like one classroom might be the perfect place to start. So I would support that 100%.
Ms. Maple and then Mr. Doran.
I just wanted to clarify that my suggestion of looking at numbers without BEST is not an indicator of like wanting to remove that program from there. It's that I want the Two Rivers Homestead APC to have the most conservative estimate of what those costs will look like, knowing that if we did maintain something with BEST out there, it would either be cost neutral or potentially beneficial to them. So I'm not asking for that to be considered as a program decision, but rather just as a like potential budgetary impact. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Doran.
couple of clarifications. If I might, through the chair, and if I can go directly to Ms. Beam, you said there are 22 best students who are coming in person, and the reason I asked the question is because, Dr. Minor, you mentioned there are 60 plus in the Two Rivers area, best students. So, and I'm assuming the teacher load is more than 22 students, so could you clarify numbers?
So his teacher load is more than 22 students because he also has in-town students. He comes in every Monday and he works with our students who are here in town. And then he is out at Two Rivers Tuesday through Friday.
And the 22 students are those who come in to see him? Who
Out
have,
at Two
who have
Rivers?
visited the
Yes,
place?
they go in
Okay,
and see
but
him.
we have 60 plus within the area of best students?
So maybe I misstated. We had 60 plus students at the Two River School last year.
Okay, then how many best students are in that geographic area? And I'm not just talking about necessarily the Two Rivers attendance area boundaries, because those are gone. But the reason to have a teacher out there is because we have a fair number of families who could potentially access that place instead of having to come into town. Same as we did for Midnight Sun, but this has been on the conversation piece for several years, having somebody out at Two Rivers, having someone out at Salcha. So I'm trying to get a handle on, and the fact that we've invested in a program to a couple $100,000, and and I was not one who was initially in favor as such, to add a teacher. We've added best teachers for that. So I don't want to see that investment thrown away. We've decided to invest in it. It's a good plan, but after 3 and 4 months, I'm not interested in tossing that out and saying, oh, well, unless we don't have anybody going there. But if he's got or that teacher has to serve people in that area, then, and the reason I'm harping on it, I guess, a little bit, or exploring it, is because that does have a big difference in whether the building is available or how much of the building is available. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves on a lease, because it's not just a lease with a particular charter school, it's to anyone, or we should know what that entails if we're going to become landlords. This is somewhat new for us, particularly in this type of situation. But even an idea of what the cost is. So I guess I have a couple of questions in there. Would appreciate a response.
I guess a response to how many students are in that area. I'm not sure that we have that information this evening. I think it's important to realize that we're also targeting students that are not currently within the district. And we know that there's a fair number of students down Sheena Hot Springs Road. And we know that here in Fairbanks, because of the start of homeschool programs being in the interior, that we have a higher percentage of homeschool students than anywhere else in Alaska. And so trying to be competitive in that market, we've stood up these satellite offices to continue to try to expand our best homeschool program within Fairbanks itself. In terms of, I don't know if your question was getting at how much we would charge for a lease or around those things. I think we haven't spent a lot of time delving into that because I didn't want to get in front of the board in terms of that exploration until the board says, yes, a building is available and you should entertain a lease with the APC. I also think it's important to note that we could explore this lease opportunity down the road if there's no interest from other charter schools with the Two Rivers APC and give them all of the numbers of what that may be, that doesn't mean that we're necessarily entering a lease with the Two Rivers APC until a charter school is actually approved by the board, and then we go through and sign that contract and finalize that piece. So just the exploration and working through that process doesn't supersede the process that the APC will still need to go through in terms of a charter approval with the board.
Follow up.
Follow up, Mr. Dorn?
I appreciate that, but I am concerned it's getting a cart before the horse. In the thing, if we don't know how we want to use the building, so what is available, and at this point, I'm not looking to move best out, whether it needs, how much of the building it needs, we can talk about, but in terms of if we're working up a lease for a specific entity, in doing that, we're heading into, actually saying, yeah, it's available and stuff. But we don't know what's available, and we don't know at what cost. And part of what I look at is, okay, what is it costing us now to keep the building open? How much would be, we'd actually have to lease it for, which involves not only the basic utilities and that type of thing, but if there are particular projects that were factored into costs of that building, what those, because we have to figure out to do that. Are we losing money, gaining money, breaking even? Or if we, we've tossed around different options in previous work sessions, and I've certainly got those here on my list. There are different ways of approaching it that may be in, that's not a charter. And I will pause to give great kudos to the Homestead Group, because they've made clear that their mission is first. The school is less, the entity is less. The mission is definitely there. And when I read the letter of intent, different ways of perhaps interpreting it, but there's an important sentence in there. We humbly ask the board to consider opening the school in an official capacity until the charter is approved, which also says that we don't have a charter application on our docket. But opening the school in some official capacity, and there are different options that we could put on the table and discuss that maybe is actually cheaper than a lease and gets a school, an in-person school presence there. So I'll come back to those options later, but while we're talking on the lease, I find this very problematic in terms of, if the administration wanted to look at a lease possibility, it's to whomever we're going to. I think it's presumptuous yet to say who we would offer it to, but I don't even know that it's viable for us to lease it out, or it's going to cost us more money as landlords. That's a responsibility.
Ms. Hull?
Thank you. The way I'm looking at this is getting more information so that way we can make an informed decision, and also getting information so the APC can provide us a complete application with a lease agreement. We can still say no. That's still within the board's purview. Thank you. So what I am asking for at this time, and what I'd like to see, is a tentative lease agreement that has an option with BEST that's still out there, as well as a tentative lease agreement that does not have best out there.
Okay, that brings it to me in the queue. I want to. I think this is a great discussion. So thank you, board, for bringing up all the questions. I do have concerns similar to what Mr. Doran has been expressing. Both that the costs are uncertain, and we have a program out there that seems to be relatively popular in the community. I am concerned with if we end up pulling best from that location, that there may be impacts. We know that typically we are able to reinvest funds from correspondence students back into the rest of the district. So I am interested in current costs and whether or not we're breaking even as well with the enrollment out there currently, and I would be interested too if if there's any way that we can get better numbers projecting growth in the future, if that's at all possible. Not to reiterate everything that everyone's been saying, but one of the concerns that I have with opening up the possibility of leasing, we have this group that has been very collaborative, very much working with the board and the administration, and that's so much appreciated. I am worried that yes, we can still say no, even if we go through this lease arrangement and enter into a tentative agreement. We can still say no to a charter, but I don't want to encourage this group to continue putting so much work into something if it's not eventually going to get the result that they're looking for. And so I would also be interested in exploring with that APC or that community what other options we might all agree on in terms of utilizing that building and being there for that community after the closure of their school. So I think those are my concerns. I do want to keep working with this community. I don't know for sure that a lease and a charter is where we need to end up. And part of that is my concern over the cost that the charters bring to the district as well. I'll end there and we'll go to Ms. Dulian.
Okay, thank you so much. You know, I want to start by saying that it's really helpful. And I know that a lot of us on the board have done this work and gone out to communities. I've made an effort and have gone into the homes of some of these families that are out in that Two Rivers community and have taken the long drive, sat down, gotten to know them. And there are a heck of a lot of Raven, Idea, and Cyberlinks homeschool families out there. They did not transfer to Best. A lot of that is because of money that they're holding year over year, allotments. We tonight are not talking about a charter. We're talking about, and through the chair to a comment that Mr. Doran made, I believe that we know how we want to use the building, and it's to fulfill our mission. And we are the decision makers. I don't believe that this is a chicken and an egg conversation. We are the ones that get to decide. What makes this conversation really unique is the threshold of risk compared to other conversations we've had around potentially opening up different charters or investing in different areas. The risk threshold is very low here. We already are investing in the site. We already have been maintaining the building. We know that having a building out in that location is helpful to building community. For example, next Wednesday, they're having an event where children can shop for free donated items to purchase with Monopoly money to buy Christmas gifts for their family members. It's a lovely event. And this charter, when we looked at the initial application, was something so creative with a year-round schedule and with it's tangibly different than any educational opportunity I think we even have in our state. And it's tied to something that is truly very rural Alaskan, incredibly different. And it's one of the most affordable places to live in our borough as well, which is a driver for younger families. So the risk is very low because of the size of the building being capped at what Deed says is 98 students. It's a much different financial conversation. And it's also a much different financial conversation because that building is already open and already staffed. So I think that I would like the administration to work with the APC to figure out precision on financials year 1 to year 5. I think that's very important. I do believe that when we look at growth, just spending time in that community and getting to know the families in that community, when we're looking at 22 students usage in a building versus potentially up to 100, and I know that when it was a neighborhood school, it was closer to around 60 when we closed it. However, that's a different school. This is something that's very different. So I would hope that the administration looks at this group and walks side by side with them in this collaborative way, because I've seen this group in particular through their actions model professionalism, model resilience, model respect, model collaboration. And I completely agree. I'm forgetting which fellow board member said this. Model putting students first. It's very clear. By pulling their application away and saying they want to fix their application, it is through their actions, they have proven that they are doing everything they can to make sure that the educational model that they're putting forward is successful and will put student achievement first. And that's something that aligns with our mission. So I hope that's a group that we should work with.
I have Ms. Maple, then Ms. Carol Hubbard.
On 2 points, I think all of the questions that Mr. Dorn has are wonderful questions, which is exactly what I want the administration to do the research and work on to be able to put together a potential lease. I mean, I think that all of those questions about what the cost, that's exactly what I want to know. That's why I want a lease to be drawn up. And it's not, the lease that we'd be offering would be based on real data. So it doesn't matter who we're talking about offering it to. It's a lease for the building. And one of the other questions, one of the other things that we talked about or that came up is the potential of losing those best students. And I just want to remind, we live in Fairbanks. It's a small community. It's 22 people. We can ask. Those are conversations that can be had of, is this, of what the impact would be. Are the kids that are enrolled and that are using that hub, are those kids that would want to go to a potential charter? I mean, we can make we come to that point, if we get a complete application before us that we want to evaluate, and if we get to the point that we want to evaluate if we want to keep best there, that can be an informed decision. So I don't want hypotheticals to get in the way of making sure that we have all of the data that we need to make an informed decision. And I do just want to agree with Ms. Julian's point about the risk threshold. That 5-year timeline that Mr. DeGraw showed us was in the slideshow when we had the administrative review of the charter, showed, that over time the cost, unlike other charter schools, that it was not many years before the cost of that charter would be less to the district than the cost of operating Two Rivers Elementary was. And that is not something that we can say for other opportunities. So that's what I think of when Ms. Julian brought up that cost, that risk threshold being so much different than when we've had similar conversations about larger charter schools. So I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Ms. Carol Hubbard.
Thanks. Well, for me, I guess the bottom line is that I'd really like to see us really evaluate the cost of the school, what it's going to cost, what we can negotiate out for a contract, regardless of who that is with, whether it is for a charter hybrid, whether it's for BEST, no matter what. I mean, we need to take this facility and do the best thing we can with it. And it appears that what's before us is going to be amazing. They have interest of over 80 students already, which I think is a break even for them. So the 5-year risk threshold, I believe that Mr. DeGraw presented, was less than $500,000. And I think that was actually in 3 years. I think in 3 years it was less than 500, and then which is very low as far as risk goes. I think we're spending $240 right now, something like that. I believe that was what the numbers totaled out for per year for the building as it stands, with only the 22 students using it. I'm grateful that we have it for those 22 students, but imagine times 4. Right? So I just, the goal of our meeting is to determine whether or not we want you to move forward with exploring a lease agreement and what that cost is, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I just want to make sure we don't get too far in the weeds about everything else, but I really do want to see what you come up with for a lease agreement, please.
Mr. Doran.
I'm going to put a couple of things together here, and if we want to explore them later, that's fine. But what I find the conversation is on that threshold of really being excited. I think what the Two Rivers group brought to us is a wealth of ideas and creative thinking, and that that broad question: what can we do for our kids? What do we want for our kids? mentioned student focused. And so there have been several things that have gone through my mind, and I'm going to put them out here just in terms of options. And part of it is I also go back to visiting Vest last year, and I had a light bulb moment in terms of the number of parents, families coming to the school, into the building for things that I had not envisioned when we closed Nordale Elementary and then made it a center for Best. And realizing that parents want that time with their kids if they have that opportunity, they want that time with their kids, but they also want their kids in a broader setting and to tap into certain things. And so with that moment, light bulb moment, with the conversations that have been prompted this fall from the Two Rivers community, and building on those ideas, I think, what about a Best hybrid? Okay, you have Best, but you have also those in person, an in-person period part of it. Not to distract us, but the reason, and I'll give brief things behind each of these, is when I look at the original Barnett Magnet model was to attract homeschool students for basically half a day. They were with their parents doing things for half, in the building for half, whether they were doing the reading, writing, math, language arts piece, or they were doing the more enrichment, social studies, science, music, those types of things. But could really build that. And I'm not saying that design, but really a Best, it's a hub. We've always had a lot of students interested in that area from correspondence. It also means that we don't have an attendance area, so they can draw people, and that might be a piece, as you mentioned, down the full length of Hot Springs Road, Nordale Road, that whole area. Having a remote school model and developing that. I was thinking we have two prototypical designs for buildings. We have the Denali Nordale building design with a small footprint, smaller school. We have the U Park Tickasuk design. Those belong to our district. We have different designs for needs, larger footprint, smaller footprint. We have remote schools. What is the plan for those? How do we serve? Do they have to be exactly the same as the schools that are less remote? And, so doing that. Having a magnet model, that's a magnet that is not going to be a particularly large one, but it's going to be community focused more, but still that having no attendance area, type of thing, can draw from people who are interested in, the homestead, that agriculture piece that is exciting. And as we've heard more about it and the reason for thinking about a year-round calendar, that almost came to fruition in this district without the whole district going to year-round. This was decades ago, I will say, but it's not out of the box to say a school, a community could do that. Or taking a program approach. I'm thinking of just taking Star of the North, which serves 9 through 12. We don't have a school serving the North Pole area in a similar manner as a program for elementary. Two Rivers could be a location for that and have a program approach there, also shared with Best, having two programs there. So, I think stirring a lot of different ideas that can be done, and it does impact when we think of a lease, because it does say, do we, and I agree, can we use that building perhaps more effectively than we are, or as effectively, but with some enhancements, enrichments. And I am concerned about if we think of a lease in mind for a particular and negotiating with a particular group, there's a certain presumption. It's an implied pre-approval. If we go this route, that's going to be there. Finding out what it would cost certainly adds to our options. The fact that by our policy, if an application comes after October 1st, they cannot open until January 1st of the following school year. We don't have an application right now. We could put something in, and that's why I say, I thought it was fascinating, pushing us, consider opening the school in an official capacity until, we could continue a conversation, but is there a need there that serves students and our district and our communities? And I'll stress communities, so we actually have several within our, in a way that benefits kids, families, and also lays some groundwork for the future. So I'll stop there. There's a lot on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. Appreciate those comments. And I had myself in the queue next. So I will just go ahead and say, I think that I have similar thoughts and concerns that, again, looking, I'd really like us to be able to look at the district holistically, look at how we use all of our resources. And I do worry a little that we're signaling, again, an intent here, which could be misleading to the public unless we're confident that we are going to open a charter. So I'll end there because otherwise I'd just repeat a lot of what Mr. Doran said. But is there anything further from the board here? Ms. Hewitt?
I would agree with both of Bobby's with Mr. Burgess and Mr. Dorn's statements on being not giving an implied assumption to any one particular school and creating a lease around that, but creating a lease that adds value to our students and moving forward from there.
Any other comments, discussion, Mr. Doran?
The thought that goes through my mind is I am less interested in a lease as I am in the conversation about how do we use that building to its best advantage. That doesn't exclude if we would be leasing it out to somebody. But I think the bottom line is how might we use that building? How might we serve students in that area? And that's why I think looking at, and there are other options that people could think about and say, what's there? But I think that's the question for me much more than, because leasing it out is just another option.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. Question for administration through myself. Do you have an estimate for the amount of time that it would take your team to put together a lease agreement or tentative lease agreement and cost it out and all of that? And what priorities would get bumped in order to work on that?
Mr. DeGraw, do you have an estimate of how long it would take?
If we dropped everything and just this was the priority, and we could do it in a relatively short amount of time, under a week, and just got to it. So yeah, I don't think it wouldn't take a exorbitant amount of time, just the lease. There's a lot of other, obviously, a lot of other steps in the process and things to do, but just specifically talking about the lease, it shouldn't be overly prohibitive.
Thank you. Anything further from the board? Ms. Julian?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. At least I think so. Would it be possible if we open this up for a lease that another school district would try to engage to lease that building from us?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we would still have rights to determine who would lease
Okay.
the property. So the right of first refusal is for district charter schools. After that, we have autonomy in terms of how we would move forward with leasing that facility.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the only reason I'm asking is because I know that there is a tremendous amount of out of district homeschool students out there, and I believe that there was interest even from one of the interior homeschooling school districts of coming in and having more of a presence in that community because there is such a large community of out of district homeschool families in that community. Okay. I don't support that. I also want to say that, okay, I'm going to go back and say that this is a little bit like a chicken and an egg. We need to make a decision based on accurate financials, and we can't have accurate financials until we know what the terms of a lease are. And so we must move forward with that to gain accurate financials so that the APC can also figure out how to operate on the financial model that is realistic. And that's what will serve students best, because then we'll be able to make decisions based on that. And, I am going to say one more thing. This conversation is very good. However, we are looking at something concrete. So we got a recommendation when we went through school closures from the school district on what would be best for that community, and that was standing up best with the financial realities that we had at that time. With all due respect to the conversation, I feel like we already have made a decision around how we are going to fulfill our educational mission in that area. Now we have entered, though, into a new conversation, a very real conversation that we had multiple meetings on. We have a tangible intent letter right here. So I feel like we're a little bit beyond hypotheticals, with all due respect. And so I think we need to move forward with this, not because it's a promise, but because without this step, we have an incomplete financial analysis. However, the intention of moving forward is not to promise that there would be a vote any certain way. It's just that it will help us in making a fiscally responsible or assessing the financials more accurately. Thank you.
Mr. Doran?
I want to note there were a number of issues with the previous application for Two Rivers Homestead, and not just the financials. There is a fair amount of things that need to be done. I do think that keeping in mind that if we decide that we could lease the building, it could be technically leased to anybody. We could say yes or no, but people might want it for office space out there. They might want to put satellite offices out there and rent space for it. the, we might find it financially beneficial to us to rent to a third party. And knowing what that would be, helps our budget considerations. We would have rights of first refusal, depending upon what we're leasing it for. If we're leasing it as a school and or space, then we might need to existing charter schools, and then we would go to if there are any new ones or whatever. But so a lease is a lease, and we'll decide whether to rent it to somebody or not. But I am also concerned and appreciative of the conversation this fall in terms of the school, is that, and we've noted that often when we get these letter of intents, it's, there's, whether it's verbal or an actually written letter, but an intent and interest in doing a charter school, it's taken multiple years. We can do that. I do want to note that we do not currently have an application on file. It is past our deadline date. But that doesn't close the door in possibilities of how we could move forward. And I would just ask that members consider, some of the options. You may have other options that you put on the table that meets also that in the intent, the hopes of the that's been expressed by often of the Two Rivers community to have an in-person presence, school presence in their community, that opens doors that we might not have anticipated a year ago. And that doesn't have to, that it's not just an either or. I am concerned that if our conversation is simply around a yes or no to a charter, that's going to be very limiting. And I would hope that we can broaden that conversation out, build on the ideas, collaborate, talk with a community in how we can best provide that educational presence. I don't want to lose the investment we've made in BEST. We added to BEST for it. Let's play it out, see that. We did that with some foresight. How do we make that competitive, drawing potentially students in, and especially new students who may be interested in homeschooling. But I hope that this conversation is broader and more encompassing of the ideas that have been placed on the table by the Two Rivers Homestead Group, that open some doors that we might be able to find common end on. And if charter is down the line, it's down the line. Don't have to close that. There could be arguments for it in favor of it, but that's a 10-year commitment on a charter. But that we can move forward, build on the ideas, work together, and do some good things for kids.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing many hands. Or am I correct in that we're kind of winding down this conversation? All right. I'll give administration a chance to chime in if they want to.
I would just say thank you for the conversation this evening. I know it can be challenging having some of these open dialogues, but that's how board processes work. We don't get to meet behind closed doors and work through some of these messy items together. And so I am hearing direction from the board in terms of exploring this lease and actually getting some costs to both the charter group and the board, so we know what that looks like if a charter application does come forward in the future.
Mr. Doran?
through the chair, you don't have to answer right now, but and maybe getting some sense if other board members other than myself is get some thoughts from the administration on other ideas that might be there. And I know that you don't have a lot of time to get into detail, but I'm mindful that and really appreciative. I think it was really good in our work session on this topic that the administration brought forth some possible investments from the district. So I don't think these are out of line to just get an idea if they're something that can be talked about, be part of our conversation, what impacts they may have on our budget, et cetera. But we put that idea of options versus charter, or I shouldn't say versus, we don't really, it's not one really against the other. And I think our best thing is to avoid that black and white, yes, no, if we can continue a conversation that leads to a good, constructive ending. So if that makes sense, but I would love to, I for one would love to hear at least some initial reactions to, yeah, we can think about it or not, you know.
Ms. Maple?
I just wanted to acknowledge that when we had the meeting that had the administrative review, the administration did put forward different models on our request of looking at both price points and staffing, and how that community would be served. So I know that the conversation certainly has already started, but I would hesitate to ask the administration to belabor, a for lack of a better word, I mean, I guess that's a word that's come up a lot tonight, a bunch of hypotheticals, when there are models before us of the pared down model like Salcha, our best hub, what a charter would look like. But I feel like from the administrative review, a lot of that information is already available to us to explore.
Ms. Carol Hubbard, is that a hand? Sorry. No, okay. Well, I'm not seeing much more from the board here. Sounds like administration has the direction they need to move forward. And so we'll just, that brings us, I guess, to if anyone has any announcements. I do think we're going to try to schedule another legislative committee meeting. We haven't determined the date yet, but we'll try to get that done soon. And that's all I had for tonight. Nothing else from administration. We're adjourned.